Bear markets are horrible and they last about a year. Bull markets are long and they last 3 to 5 years. If you follow that playbook, we're going into year 3 of a bull market.
Nick, we're here to talk about our market outlook for 2025, but before we do, I'd love to do a year in review. At the end of 2023, we said that the sun was starting to shine again, and so at the conclusion of 2024, do you think that the sun did shine this year?
Yeah, the sun definitely shined in 2024. I think what we were trying to say to people was, at the end of 23, we felt we were sort of at the start of a bull market. 2022 was obviously a bear market. 23 was the first year of the bull market, and 24 was very much the second year of the bull market that we've seen. So the sun was shining. You've seen strong double-digit returns across most major indices around the world, and our funds have done well in excess of that over that period. And so this is what generally happens in a bull market. Asset prices go up. And so from our point of view, our job was to invest in leverage from what we thought would be a very good environment for markets. And I'm pretty happy with how we executed on that.
And what were the most significant market events that happened throughout 2024?
Yeah, I think, look, from a macro perspective, a lot of people got stuck looking at the macro in 24. They got stuck looking at, was there going to be a hard landing? Was inflation going to come back, etc. But ultimately what happened is inflation went away. The interest rate moves that central banks had made ultimately, caused economies to slow, but they didn't crash. And in the end, the market just went back to looking at the idiosyncratic corporate stories that were out there. And there were lots of good idiosyncratic corporate stories, particularly around AI. AI is clearly, in a boom, also in its second year. And that boom continued without 2024. So that was obviously a big event. The macro being less important is actually a big event because it allows stocks to do what they do best, which is follow their earnings. And then obviously we finished the year with the US election and the consequences of that if we go into next year.
And so did the team make any strategic shifts throughout the year to navigate these market movements?
No, so from our point of view, 2024 was a great year for us because ultimately we sort of had worked this all out in 2023. So we positioned the fund quite aggressively, and we said this very clearly, and if you go back and look at the video from last year, we positioned the fund quite heavily in what we saw as the shovels in the AI boom. So that was mainly semiconductor companies, that was hyperscale cloud providers, and that was the climate companies that build these large these large data centers. That was how we positioned the fund at the start of the year, and that ultimately worked throughout the year. On top of that, we managed to broaden out the portfolio as the year went on. So we also said quite clearly at the start of last year that that AI would dominate the first half of the year, but in the second half of the year things would broaden out. And so we broadened out the portfolio in the second half of the year, and that proved to be successful as well. So the reason why we did have a good year is because we had a good plan going into it, and the plan has largely played out as we thought.
So speaking about Munro having a good year, what were some highlights for the Munro funds?
Yeah, I think from my point of view, it's always nice when you do a lot of work on something to work something out before everyone else, and it comes true. The big highlight for me would definitely be, that Nvidia hadn't finished. A lot of people thought at the end of 23, there's no way Nvidia can go up again, and it's gone up, another 100% plus this year. On top of that, things like Constellation Energy, we were very clear that there was a climate angle to the AI trade or the AI boom, and that Constellation Energy with nuclear would end up doing these large hyperscale deals, which they ended up doing with Microsoft with the reopening of the 3 Mile Island power plant. And the large deal they did with Microsoft, which saw a huge bump in that share price, and Constellation actually outperformed Nvidia this year. So that's very heartening when you do that work and work that out. And then the last highlight would just be some of the great small cap ideas that we brought into the fund throughout the year. Things like Shark Ninja have been a wonderful investment for us. Something that Chow found for the small cap fund that we ultimately brought into the all cap fund, but Shark Ninja as a consumer play around kitchen appliances has been a great performer for us. And then also things like Axon and security have been great performers for us. So some of those broadening out and small cap ideas were good highlights because they provided good diversification from some of those AI bets I talked about earlier.
So that was looking at the year review. Now looking forward, do you anticipate that 2025 will be another positive year?
Yeah, so if you follow the same playbook, we are in a bull market. Bull markets generally last, I think with the sun is shining argument, I pointed out, bear markets are horrible and they last about a year. Bull markets are long and they last 3 to 5 years. So if you follow that playbook, we're going into year 3 of a bull market. So it should be another positive year of returns. Probably not as strong as the year before, but positive nonetheless. Because ultimately central banks have more than 500 basis points up their sleeve to cut rates if things go wrong. Corporate earnings should broaden out as an economic recovery slowly begins. And the stocks should just go back to following their earnings. And so from that point of view, it should be another positive year for markets and one where we should be taking risk to try and generate a return for our clients.
And are there any major events that the team will be looking out for throughout next year?
Yeah, so for us, the big one is does this AI boom continue into 2025? Obviously, that worked very well for us in 24, and should we get off that or should we continue with that? Current view is to continue. We're hearing very positive data points from the hyperscalers in particular around wanting to build these huge GPU clusters around the US and around the world. And there seems to be no diminishing returns at scale. So the short example I'll give you on this video is, that ChatGPT-3 has written off 10,000 H100s. ChatGPT-4 is off 25,000 H100s. Tesla's just built 100,000 GPU cluster of H100s, and companies want to build 200,000 and 500,000 and million GPU clusters. So we don't see any pullback in investment around AI. And if anything, there's no diminishing returns at scale. We should start seeing some great products come out of this stuff. So it's a very exciting time around AI, and we think that will continue. On top of that Constellation deal we talked about, we think you're going to see at least 4 more of those. And so the power angle is still to be supplied up. So we do think, again, we're only in year 2 of the AI boom. I'll give you a good example. ChatGPT is less than 2 years old. If you told me when ChatGPT came out that Microsoft would restart a nuclear power plant to build a $50 billion data center to run generative AI, I would have said that was slight far-fetched. But that's where we've got to in just 2 years. Where are we going to get to in the next 2? And the answer is probably further down the road. So from that point of view, we still see a lot of opportunity there. And then, as I said earlier, broadening out ideas. We have a lot of other things that we think we've got in the pipe that can still work, particularly in small cap land.
Just pulling on that thread, so are you saying that AI is going to impact other industries in 2025?
Yeah, that's a great question. So from our point of view, as I said earlier, we're very focused on the shovels in the boom. Over time, you're going to see these great applications arrive. And some of these applications are in industries that you probably wouldn't think about a lot. So yes, so from our point of view, companies that do AI on MRIs, for instance, in the healthcare sector to help spot cancers earlier, would be companies that are leveraged to these themes. Companies that do AI on security footage to help sell more security cameras, more security products, would be leveraged to this. On top of that, you should at some point see a device cycle. Apple will bring out some decent products around AI, which will ultimately get us to go into a large device cycle. And so all of that will help broaden out the growth in the portfolio, and it'll broaden out growth in the economy and broaden out earnings, which ultimately means more opportunities to find good returns aside from just the shovels in the AI boom.
And so AI is a really dominant theme for us, and we are very excited about it, but we do have lots of other areas of interest. What do you anticipate might happen with these areas of interest next year? Yeah,
so I think I'd point to 2 straight off the bat. I mean, obviously consumer has been weak for a while now because of the high interest rates. As interest rates come down, the consumer will get better. That gives us an opportunity to buy these consumer businesses that we really like. Ones we own today are things like Chipotle. I talked about Shark Ninja, but then things like On Running as well, which is in the small cap fund at the moment. So some of these consumer companies should actually start to have a much better environment to operate in, and that's a good area to look for some new ideas. I talked about security from the AI angle, but there's definitely a spending tailwind there. So we are seeing a big tailwind from governments and cities, municipal cities around the world to want to spend more on public safety. And so that benefits, obviously I mentioned Axon, but a couple of other companies in that space. And then lastly, look, healthcare. Healthcare is still a great place to invest. Yes, there's an AI angle, but it's still a great place to invest just from a growth angle. And so from that point of view, these companies have been a little bit forgotten, and we do see some good room for recovery there in some of our healthcare ideas. Those would be 3 we'd point to today, but I suspect more will come along as the year goes on, as we get more confident about an economic recovery.
So with all that in mind, how are you positioning the portfolios at the start of 2025?
Yeah, so at the start of 2025, so right now, obviously we are in our planning phase and we are trying to set our plan for 2025. If you go back and look at the plan for 2024, it played out, sort of as we spoke about. From our point of view, we definitely think it's a continuation of the AI boom. And so we're still very much focused on some of these semiconductor companies, software companies and climate companies that are exposed to that. We don't think it's time to say that the boom is eventually going to turn into a bust, which it may at some point, but it's definitely not next year from our point of view. So that's definitely an area of focus. Beyond that, it's very much around these broadening out ideas. So from our point of view, we think security is a big area, one that's definitely going to get a lot more focus as we get into next year. We talked about healthcare, we talked about consumer. Aside from that, it's really then just going down the market cap curve. And so from our point of view, big cap tech's had a great run. Big cap tech was the obvious thing to invest in coming out of the bear market. Over time, potentially big cap tech doesn't have as strong a year next year that it had in previous years, and so you want to try and broaden out the weightings within the portfolio. That'd be the rough way we're thinking about it today. Last thing I'd just say is it should be another year of the bull market, so it should be a good environment to invest. And so from that point of view, we're excited about the opportunities in front of us.
Thanks, Nick. I'm looking forward to next year.
Thanks very much.